You're listening to the Cyberwire Network, powered by N2K.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to N2K Cyberwire's Hacking Humans podcast, where each week we look behind the social engineering scams, phishing schemes, and criminal exploits that are making headlines and taking a heavy toll on organizations around the world. I'm Dave Bittner, and joining me is Joe Kerrigan. Hey, Joe.
Hi, Dave.
Maria is off on vacation this week, but we will
Lucky
have her.
Maria.
I know, right? She will be back with us next time. So it's just the two of us this week. We've got some good stories to share, which we will do right after this message from our show sponsor. But first, a word from our sponsor, KnowBe4. Where would InfoSec professionals be without users making security mistakes? Working less than 60 hours per week, perhaps. Actually having a weekend every so often. We get it. User behavior can be a challenge. But users can also be an InfoSec professional's greatest asset once properly equipped. What do we mean by that? Well, stay with us, and in a few minutes, we'll hear from our sponsors at KnowBe4 on that very question. All right, Joe, before we dig into our stories here, we've got a bit of follow-up here. What do we got for us?
Yeah, Tim wrote in to give us the business on my story on payment apps back in episode 302.
Okay.
Tim says, hi, I love your show and make it a priority to listen to your show, which is good. I listen to a lot of podcasts, and I move yours up to the top, which is great.
Very
Thank you,
nice.
Tim.
Yeah.
I also work for a bank.
Uh-oh.
However, it's a small community bank.
Sounds like we got an expert on the line.
Well, you're right.
Joe.
Yeah, I would say that Tim is probably more qualified than you or I to talk about this.
That's a low bar.
Right.
but good. All right, so what does Tim have to say?
Tim says, your comments about Zelle seem a little unresearched. I know it's easy to pick on big corporations and big banks in particular. However, your conclusion that they should just pay more of the money that's been stolen is misguided. Number one, why should any business be at fault for consumer misusing their tool? Unless the tool is faulty, it seems like we would all be responsible enough for the tools that we use. We all should be responsible. Sorry. Yes. I have some comments on this. And number two, and this is the more valid point. Who do you think is going to pay for those transactions? Ultimately, it will be the consumer, which is correct. That's what's going to happen. The bank is just going to increase the cost and pass that on to the consumer.
Yeah.
Or they can stop doing it. They can avoid the risk and not do it.
Do what?
Not have one of these apps, have one of these transactions. Like Maria said when we were discussing this, her bank doesn't participate in Zelle.
Oh, okay.
Right? So they could just say, no, we're not going to do that.
Right.
Tim goes on to say, keep going on. You guys are doing a good job. Just research more. And like I said, his point number two is correct. This will be passed. Costs will be passed on to the consumer. They always are.
Yeah.
But in response to number one, why should they be at fault unless the tool is faulty? I would use the term defective. In systems development, we track defects, right?
Okay.
The software may meet all the requirements, but I assert there's a defect in the requirements or design, or maybe both.
Okay.
Right? Sure, the code is good. It's secure. People can do what they want. They can transfer money between friends. But I think there's something missing in the consumer protection features because there was never consideration by the banks for the customer getting defrauded this way. The way I think about this is I got in an argument one time with a cell phone company. I said, you should replace the screen that cracked when I dropped your phone. And they go, oh, we don't cover crack screens from you dropping it.
Right.
I said, how many people do you know that have cell phones? He goes, everybody I know that has a cell phone. How many people do you know that have at one point in time dropped their cell phones? Well, everybody's dropped their cell phone.
Right.
That's right. Your phone should be able to survive a drop from the average height of a human, maybe a little bit taller, and where they hold the phone, and it should be able to survive that drop onto most surfaces. I wouldn't expect it to survive a drop face down in the concrete.
Okay.
Right? But if it falls on the carpet, the screen shouldn't crack. Your phone should be rugged enough so that doesn't happen. And if it isn't rugged enough, it is defective in design and requirements.
Okay.
Because the requirement should be the customer is going to drop their phone. That will happen.
Right.
The phone shall survive a drop onto most interior surfaces. And you can define that. But nope, they don't do that. They just wave their hands up and walk away and leave it to the customer.
I mean, I don't know. Do you have a protective case on your phone?
I do.
As do I, because I am a klutz.
Right. And why do we have that? Because the phone designers don't have defective products. They are defective in design and requirements. That's why. And I'll die on this hill, Dave.
Well, enjoy yourself over there
for
because
phone screens. But maybe not the Zell hill. I don't know that I'll say this.
Well, what do you think's defective about Zell then?
That's why I'm not really willing to die on this hill, because I can't put my finger on what's defective here. Maybe I don't have a better solution for this.
Okay.
Right? With phone screens, I have a better solution. Build a ruggedized phone. Build a better phone that will withstand it. That's an easy mechanical engineering problem to fix.
Yeah.
This is not so easy. This is psychological and organizational psychology. All kinds of stuff is involved here. But another reason I don't use Zelle is specifically because it's run by the banks.
Okay.
Right? I am more willing to use Venmo or Cash App, but specifically because they are not run by banks. I'm not comfortable with that much, quote, vertical integration.
Why?
I just don't. I think I have all of my eggs at that point in time in moving my money around in one basket.
Okay.
I don't know. There's just something.
But don't you think, I mean, you're just increasing, by using a third party, you're increasing your surface, your attack surface, right?
Perhaps, but maybe. But I don't know that I'm increasing my attack surface that much, because if I use Zelle, that's technically a third party that's just owned by the same banks. Now, I don't bank with any of these large banks, so
okay.
And
you bank with the Joe's Under the Mattress Savings and Trust,
right? Right. That's right. Joe's Under the Mattress Savings and Trust.
Right.
But yeah, this is why I feel this. Now I get Tim's point. Tim's point is correct. If we just make the banks pay, then that will just increase cost to the consumer. And I do get that users are partly responsible. And we had another email that came in that was similar that said, if somebody walks up to you and scams you out of $20 cash, you just got scammed out of $20 cash.
Right.
That's what happens.
Right.
But this is not getting scammed out of all the cash in your wallet. This is getting scammed out of all the cash in your bank account. This is devastating and life-saving or life-impacting.
But it's still your fault.
It kind of, yeah, mostly.
I mean, to me, here's a fundamental difference in my mind. So a couple things. First of all, I think one of the nuances here is that I think we've gotten used to credit card companies coming to our rescue when things go bad when we're using our credit cards.
Yes.
And the reason credit card companies can do that is because they charge very high interest rates to use their products.
Correct.
Right?
It's not even very high interest rates. They charge remarkably high fees for every single purchase to the merchant.
Right. And yes, but between those two things, they have a lot of wiggle room.
Spare cash lying around.
To come in and say, we're going to be the hero here.
Yep.
I would hazard to say, this is speculation on my part, but I would hazard to say that
margins are much tighter at banks. But
that the credit card companies are, in doing these sorts of things, coming to the aid of consumers to the degree that they do, that helps them make the case with regulators for keeping those fees and interest rates so high.
It might.
Yeah.
Yeah, it might.
Now, the way I look at the situation with Zelle, and the degree to which something is the responsibility of the consumer versus the responsibility of the organization. Like, to me, let's say I go to buy something at my local convenience store and I swipe my credit card and there's a skimmer on that credit card machine, right? To me, that's the organization's fault. I did nothing wrong. I was using my card in a secure way. The organization failed to properly protect the device that they provide for me to use to do this transaction.
Right, by
So
using like a chip and pin system or a chip system.
whatever it is. Yeah,
Right.
they have that is on them. But if I fall for a social engineering scam and someone manages to scam me out of all the money in my bank account, the bank has nothing to do with that. And as sad as it is, and as much as I would hope that the bank would make me whole, the bank didn't do anything wrong. I initiated all the transactions. I mean, it'd be great for them to have safety checks in there, and they do. You know, the banks certainly have lots of fraud detection built into their systems, and also we're seeing more and more, like even just folks at the grocery store or the drugstore are trained to recognize when people are being scammed. You know, excuse me, sir, I've noticed that you're buying an unreasonable number of gift cards, right? Yeah, that sort of thing.
There's a Nigerian prince that says...
Right, exactly. Right. So to that effect, I get where Tim is coming from here, and I think I agree with him for the most part.
I get Tim's point, and I'm not mad at Tim for suggesting this. I'm not, but I'm kind of passionate about that. I think there needs to be more consumer protection in here. And you know what? I'm not being helpful because I'm not offering a good solution. You know?
Right.
Because, again, I'm not as familiar with the industry as other people in the industry.
Yeah.
So I acknowledge that.
But I think that part of the value proposition of things like Zelle is that the fees are much lower and it's quicker and it's accessible compared to a credit card. You know, anybody, I don't know. I don't think you have to apply to be able to use Zelle. You just have to have a bank account. So yeah. All right. Well, interesting discussion, and thank you, Tim, for writing in and setting us straight. I do appreciate it,
and setting us up for an interesting discussion.
No, it's always good when people who know more about things than we do let us know, where we got it right and where we got it wrong. So. To that point, if there's something that you would like to set us straight about, you can email us. It's hackinghumans@n2k.com. All right, let's jump into our stories here. Joe, why don't you start things off for us?
Dave, my story comes actually to me courtesy of Dr. Tony DeBurro.
Oh, okay.
He sent me an email with this story on it. It says, hey, you're still doing Hacking Humans? And
Your former supervisor.
Up at Johns Hopkins University Information Security Institute.
Right.
And he sent the story from the Boston Globe. It's by Sean Murphy. It's about a woman named Susie Enos. Enos? I don't know how to pronounce it. Do I pronounce it like Brian Eno with an N, or is it Enos?
I'd go with Enos.
Enos. Okay.
Yeah.
So she's in Bedford. I'm assuming that's Massachusetts because it's from the Boston Globe. But she had a sister, unfortunately, who passed away in January named Betsy Egan.
Okay.
And Susie and Betsy had a joint account together at a local bank. And one day, Susie logs in and sees that someone has made some Uber Eats transactions on her account that she shares with her sister. Now, Susie is an IT director. That's what she does for a living. So you would think that she is no technical novice.
Right.
So she immediately starts tracking things down. Her conclusion is that scammers called T-Mobile, who was Betsy's mobile provider, and convinced them that they were Betsy's surviving family members and did a SIM swap.
Oh.
And she doesn't know if they called or went in person, but we'll get to that in a minute.
Okay.
Once they did that, they were able to change a lot of the passwords on a lot of her accounts, including her old email account. So they had access to a lot of stuff. So here's the question. How did this happen? How? So part one is that in Massachusetts, death certificates are public record. I believe that's the case everywhere. I mean, they're pretty much public record, right?
It makes sense.
Yeah,
sure.
I mean, birth certificates, death certificates, you have to pay for them, but you can get them. But in Massachusetts, they include the person's date of birth and the person's social security number. So T-Mobile requires that as knowledge-based authentication when making changes to a deceased person's account.
Okay.
So the state of Massachusetts just gives that information to anybody who comes in and asks for and purchases or pays for a death certificate. So if you are watching the newspapers, you see an obituary, you are perfectly and legally allowed to go to the clerk of the court somewhere. I'm not a lawyer, Maybe we should have another expert online to help us with this one. But Susie thinks the scammers picked up a death certificate in person, and then they used a bunch of open source intelligence gathering information methods to gain information about Betsy so they could pose as family members. She knows that they compromised her email. They probably looked her up on LinkedIn and gathered a lot of information there. LinkedIn is such a good open source intelligence gathering source.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorites. But that's only part of it. The death certificate and then going out and reading obituaries, all this open source information that you can just get. But the other part of it is T-Mobile. T-Mobile, who says they were just following their policies when they were doing the SIM swap on this phone. They refused to even acknowledge a scam. But after Sean starts reporting on this, Sean is the reporter that wrote this story, the company acknowledges that a, quote, thief committed fraudulent activity on Ms. Egan's account, and they vowed to review their policies in the ongoing fight for fraud and bad actors. So this is once again a demonstration of when things, you're not getting a response from one of these organizations, it's perfectly fine for you to go to the media. If you can get their attention and put a spotlight on them, their tune changes. These organizations change their tune.
Yeah.
But initially, like I said, T-Mobile said they were following their process, but Sean points out in this article that T-Mobile's written policies allow family members with proper documentation to either close the deceased family member's account or keep it open with the same phone. Not do a SIM swap. So if you go in with a SIM swap, if you go in and try to do a SIM swap on a deceased person's phone, they shouldn't let you do that.
Or at least it should be a red flag.
Right. At least it should be a red flag.
I mean, it seems at this point any SIM swap should be a red flag. Now, again, I don't know. Never having worked in a phone store myself, I don't know how routine a SIM swap is as just a regular part of doing business in one of those stores. There very well could be many, many reasons why people need to do SIM swaps that I just don't know about. So I don't want to say, but at the very least, it should throw up a flag. It seems to me when someone comes in to do business for someone who is recently deceased, just to say, what's this about?
Right. Here's another problem is that generally in the United States, when women get married, they change their names.
Right.
So you can be a guy walking in there, like I could be Joe Kerrigan and walk in and say that Sally Smith, who passed away, was my sister. Her maiden name was Sally Kerrigan, my dearly departed sister Sally. So, I mean, there's really not a way to defend against it based on last name either. So, I mean, I really think the not doing a SIM swap is important. Not on a deceased person's account. Once that phone is gone, we're just going to close the line.
Right.
You need to think about this when you're dealing with it. And it's difficult to think about this. And that's one of the things that Susie mentions in this article is that she was grieving while this happened.
Sure.
Right. So she's not paying lucidly clear attention, focused. You're not thinking that someone's going to come on and scam you right there. You're sad because your sister has passed away.
Sure.
Make plans for this, for your future. Have an idea of what you're going to do. I have beneficiaries on all my bank accounts, and that's how I want my phone or my transfer of my assets to be handled, is through that channel. I don't want someone trying to log into the account, and I've made that clear to my family. They said, we don't know the password to any of your bank accounts. I'm like, you don't need to know them. Just need to go into that bank and say, Joe's dead. Here's his death certificate. I'm his beneficiary. Here's my ID. Please give me control of the account. And I want them to do that quickly.
Well, but so that brings up a really interesting point because I haven't really thought about this before.
Right.
When someone passes away, and the obituary is usually published pretty quickly.
Right.
In most cases. And I would imagine the folks who are out there looking to do these sorts of scams, they're perusing the obituaries on a
absolutely
daily basis. Are you in a bit of a race against time of the time between when the obituary is published, the death certificate is available, and the family doing their due diligence and shutting down all of these accounts?
Yeah, I think so. The death certificate in this case became available in early February.
Right.
And Betsy died sometime in January. So there was some time. I don't know how much time, maybe a week or at least a week, but maybe 2 weeks. Yeah, you're probably in a race against time against that.
The other thing that strikes me about this is this. It seems to me that this could have been prevented by having a PIN on your SIM card account.
Probably not, actually.
How come?
Because Betsy presumably was the only person that knew that PIN. So if you show up with a death certificate, they have a way to circumvent that PIN. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. I thought about that too.
Yeah.
And I'll bet that doesn't work in this case. And I'll bet that's one of the reasons these scammers look for obituaries. So, I mean, and I'm not sure that's a bad policy that T-Mobile has. When a deceased person's family member comes in, they say, we want to either close the account or keep the account open, but use this phone and never let it change SIMs again. Never let a SIM swap happen again. I don't know, but you may need, if you chose to go about the path where you say, just take my phone and get access to all my accounts, then that's the way you're going to do it. I don't have that path set up as a way to do it, but I do use my phone for authentication and multi-factor authentication to a number of services.
Right.
So it is a possibility.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is interesting.
It is.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the other thing that strikes me is that this should be an example of why you want to have your credit frozen with all the credit agencies also, so that the default is that people can't just go and open accounts in your name.
Right.
If they have this information.
Yeah, but frankly, at that point, you're dead. They're not taking your money; they're just using your name.
Right, but you're saving your loved ones from the hassle of having to sort through any of this stuff after the fact. Even just getting, letters and you can tell them to go pound sand.
Right, that's exactly what I would tell them. Pound sand. You let somebody open an account. Oh, hey, he died before this account was open.
Right. Right.
I don't know what you want me to do, dude, but it
you don't
want to be giving you money.
You don't want to have to deal with that while you're grieving.
Right, absolutely not.
Yeah. All right, well, we will have a link to that story in the show notes. My story was actually brought to my attention from someone over on Mastodon, someone named Royce Williams, and he brought to my attention a feature of your credit card that I was unaware of that could inadvertently land you in a very frustrating scam loop.
Really?
Yeah. So here's the story.
Okay.
There is a feature of your credit card, and we're just going to talk about MasterCard because they have this functionality. This is called the Automatic Billing Updater Service.
Okay.
So imagine, Joe, that you are, you've given your credit card to Amazon.
Yes.
Because you do a lot of shopping at Amazon.
Right.
You and your lovely bride. And so you have your credit card saved there.
Okay.
And Amazon has noticed that your credit card is going to be expiring soon.
Right.
So through this program with MasterCard, Amazon can do one of two things. They can reach out to MasterCard and say, hey, MasterCard, we noticed that Joe Kerrigan's credit card is going to expire soon. Could you send us the updated credit card information for the new card? And MasterCard will say, well, certainly, here it is. And so you will get uninterrupted service at Amazon because of this.
That is interesting. You know what, Dave? I have noticed that a couple of my credit cards have expired on some of my automatic, like I have Chewy.
Yep.
Automatic pet food delivery.
Yep.
Because I hate when my dogs are looking at me and they're like, I don't have any food. And then I go, I got to go out to the store to feed you animals.
Right. Right.
So I just have it automatically delivered. And I have, since I started that, I haven't had to do it. But my credit card has expired in the time since I started it. And my food still comes and I still get billed.
Yes.
So this is how.
This is how.
So my dogs are very grateful for this feature.
So this is a feature, but also potentially a bug.
Yes.
There are two ways that MasterCard offers this up to their credit card processors, or their what do you call someone who's the person, the vendor, the store, the storefront.
The store. That's a merchant.
The merchant.
The
Thank
merchant
you. Merchant
is the term of
That's
art.
the word I'm looking for.
Right.
Right. So MasterCard can either push these out to the merchants automatically if they're enrolled in this program, or the merchants can request and pull them from MasterCard. So either way. The problem here comes when a bad person, bad guy or gal gets a hold of your credit card information and they use it. And you contact your credit card information, and the bad guys are using your information with a fraudulently set up merchant account that is enrolled in the automatic billing updater service. So you notice that something's amiss with your credit card. You reach out to the credit card company and say, hey, I need a new credit card because this one's been compromised. The credit card company says, good news, we'll have one to you in a few days. They mail you the credit card. Guess what gets pushed out to the scammer?
Does this also happen when fraudulent charges appear?
It's not. So again, it's a fraudulent merchant account.
Right.
So if scammers have, yes.
This is such an easy fix.
Go on.
So here's what's happening. Let me see if I got this right. Let's say I'm Chewy.
You're right.
Right. And Joe's credit card, let's say that, well, let's go back to the example. I have a Chewy account.
Yeah.
That credit card gets compromised somewhere else.
Right.
Right. Chewy can then say to MasterCard, hey, Joe's credit card no longer works. You have a new information? And MasterCard goes, sure, here they are.
Correct.
But MasterCard knows the reason my cancellation was made was because of fraud.
Correct.
So the workflow should be, hey, Joe's credit card is no longer good. Can I have the updated information? I'm sorry. No, you'll have to get it from the user. It was used fraudulently. Have the user update the information. We can't provide it to you here.
Okay.
That's the way it should work, but that's not the way it works.
Well,
is it?
It's not. But I mean, let's look at the upside to it working this way. I mean, suppose you have a dozen different folks that you work with.
Yep.
It is very convenient.
Yes.
For that new credit card that being on the way to automatically update with all of your legitimate providers.
I will agree with that 100%.
Right. Because there's nothing worse than when you have to replace a credit card and things that you had forgotten were automatically on that credit card suddenly either stop being delivered or whatever. Like it's a hassle.
Yeah.
It's a nuisance.
It is.
So there is a definite upside to this. But the person who posted this on Mastodon pointed out, Royce Williams pointed out, that you can find yourself in a loop with this because the scammers can get your updated card information before you get the updated card in the mail. Right?
Jeez.
So you can get the updated card in the mail and it already has fraudulent charges on it. And you can end up in this loop.
Now you got to call the credit card company again.
Right. And Royce also pointed out that it seems to be a bit of there's a gap in the knowledge of the folks that you call from the credit card company to really understand how this service works to break the loop.
Really?
Yeah. So you have to be very specific and say, this is why I'm canceling this card. I'm stuck in a loop and we got to stop this loop. And then they can do things to make that happen. But evidently it's not automatic. Now, can you opt out? Good news. You can. You can. So let's say you have a MasterCard. You can go to the provider of that MasterCard, the bank, whoever issued that card to you, and you can request an opt-out form, which can be online. And you fill out the information and you say, I don't want anything to do with this. And they will unenroll you from the automatic billing updater service. You will no longer get the benefit of not having to manually go through. But, here's a security balance.
Yeah,
right?
I'll tell you what, Dave. whenever I get the Easy Pass here in Maryland, we have Easy Pass for our tolls. They don't use this. And when they say, hey, your credit card's about to expire, that is like a nightmare for me. Like, I got to go navigate that piece of crap, 20-year-old looking website to update my credit card information. And the fonts are so tiny and it's awful. It's an awful experience. Nobody has a good time at the DMV. Nobody has a good time at the Easy Pass office. Anyway, I digress. But so I would love it if they did this. And even with things like Chewy and other services that I have, I think my Disney Plus subscription was renewed this way. I would hate to have some little child be waiting for me to go, hey, are you going to turn on Bluey for me? And you go, yeah, sure. Hold on, let me get my credit card.
Right.
I don't want to have to deal with that.
Well, the other thing that this made me think of was, I know there have been times in my life where I have relied on the expiration of a credit card to terminate a service.
Right, like the gym.
Yeah, right. There you go. Yeah, like the gym. I had a maddeningly impossible to cancel Skype account that, like, it was with an email address that no longer worked, and there was this, that, and it was one of those things where you spend so much time trying to jump through all the hoops that you eventually just throw up your hands and you say, you know what?
I'll pay the $2.
This credit card is going to expire someday, and that'll be the end of it.
Right.
And so, but I was unaware of this program where that isn't a given.
So are you still paying for Skype?
No, the Skype is gone.
Okay.
That was a credit card that was actually terminated without renewal, like it was ended.
Okay.
No more, not renewing that one.
Close that account.
Close the account. Yes, but I think that's something to keep in mind here. That if you're relying on that, check to see if your provider has this automatic billing updater service or not.
Something just occurred to me. I have a credit card that I canceled because there were fraudulent charges on it recently, and I see continuing services for a subscription my wife has on it.
Mm.
So I have totally experienced all aspects of this.
Unknowingly.
Until now, I was like, I wonder how that happens. Oh, well, those are right charges. They're not fraudulent. Just go about my day.
Sure.
Well,
now you
not
know.
Paying attention.
So we'll have a number of links in the show notes here. I've got a link to the initial posting on Mastodon that brought this to my attention. We've got a story out of Winnipeg, Canada, that has the tale of someone caught in one of these loops. And then we've got a couple links to information on MasterCard's website. One of them is one of their pages for their developers that kind of outlines the functionality of this tool. And so if you're into the nuts and bolts of how it works, there's
awesome.
a page.
That's how those fraudulent guys, those fraudulent merchants set themselves up.
I put this in here for you, Joe, because I figured you would enjoy, getting under the hood and seeing how it works.
Yeah.
And then we actually have a link to a bank that has the opt-out page on there. So if you want to see how that works, so you know what to ask for. If this is something you're not interested in, you can do that at your own bank.
Yeah. By the way, these fraudulent merchants that set up probably don't charge your credit card because they don't want to be identified as fraudulent. They probably just hold your credit card information and then use this service. So there's another way MasterCard could limit this. And they go, wait, you've never charged his credit card. You've just asked us for an update.
Okay.
Or maybe they could say, if you haven't charged this credit card over $100 in the past year or over $50 in the past year, you don't get an update. There's tons of ways to make this work better than it does right now.
Yeah. I mean, it's, security versus convenience, right? This is that.
Yep.
100%.
I'm obviously on board with the convenience. I love this convenience.
Right.
This has really helped me out.
There you go. All right. We will be right back with our catch of the day after this message from our show sponsor. We were talking about making users into an asset for security professionals. Simply put, users want to do the right thing. They're often just lacking the knowledge to do so. That's one of the reasons KnowBe4 has released Security Coach, a real-time security coaching tool that takes alerts from your existing security stack and sends immediate coaching to users who've taken risky actions. For example, imagine a user has visited a high-risk website or tried to open a document containing malware. Existing security tools will likely block that action, but the user might not understand why. Security Coach analyzes these alerts and provides users with relevant security tips via email or Slack, coaching them on why the action they just took was risky. Help users learn from their mistakes and strengthen your organization's security culture with Security Coach. Learn more about Security Coach at knowbe4.com/securitycoach. That's knowbe4.com/securitycoach. All right, Joe, we are back, and it is time for our Catch of the Day.
Dave, our Catch of the Day comes from Felipe, who writes, I was surprised to receive this in my postal mailbox. This is actually physical Catch of the Day. Addressed to me and using my surname as the same as the deceased. So another dead person scam here.
Okay.
But this person doesn't exist, and Felipe says, I have a fairly uncommon last name, but no relatives named Maria that I know of. So the letterhead is cut off here, but it is from the Hudson Bay LLP in Ontario, Canada. And I want you to read just the first sentence of this so we can all have a good laugh.
It says, Dear Felipe, my name is Mr. Hudson M. Bay. I'm a partner at Hudson Bay LLP in Ontario, Canada.
Yes.
How fortuitous
I know your brother,
for Mr. Bay.
Bay. and your sister Tampa Bay.
Your sister San Francisco Bay.
Right, San Francisco Bay.
Of course, they're all cousins of Michael Bay, who directed all the Transformers movies. But
I get the impression that somebody found this company online and just said, Hudson Bay LLP, that must be somebody's name.
Right.
And just went with it.
Right. That there's someone named Hudson Bay. I love it. Oh, it's so good. It's so good. Do we even bother with the rest of this?
There's more jokes to make.
Yeah. It says, apologies if my letter came to you as a surprise, since there's been no previous correspondence between us. There is an unclaimed permanent life insurance policy held by our deceased client. This transaction pertains to an unclaimed payable on death savings monetary deposit in the sum of $10,820,000 United States dollars. The policyholder was one of our clients, late Dr. Maria, who was a real estate investor and precious stone dealer. She was a COVID-19 victim who died about 4 years ago. Since her death, no one has come forward for the claim, and all our efforts to locate his relatives have proved unsuccessful. I
have not met a man named Maria yet.
No, not so far. They're probably out there.
Yep.
But haven't met one.
Right.
So there's a red flag. Also, summoning COVID-19, which is, topical-esque.
Yeah, but she died 4 years ago when people were actually dying from COVID-19.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
maybe.
The insurance company code stipulates that insured permanent policies not claimed must be turned over to the Abandoned Property Division of the state after 2 to 3 years. Therefore, I ask for your consent to be in partnership with me for the claim of this policy benefit in view of the similarity in the same last name and nationality with the deceased. So, this person is basically telling you to participate in a scam.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
And they have this timeline of 2 to 3 years. That's not how any government regulation works. If this were real, it would be after 3 years, exactly 3 years.
Yeah. If you permit me to add your name to the policy, all proceeds will be processed on your behalf. I wish to point out that I want 10% of this money to be shared among charity organizations, while the remaining 90% will be shared between us.
Because this is a good guy,
This is a good person.
Yes.
They want,
right.
10%, that's over $1 million, Joe. That's going to go to charities.
Come on, Dave. We're going to help out somebody.
We can all feel good about it.
Right.
This is 100% risk-free. I do have all necessary documentation to expedite the process in a highly professional and confidential manner. I will provide all the relevant documents to substantiate your claim as the beneficiary. This claim requires a high level of confidentiality, and it may take up to 14 business days from the date of receipt of your consent. Contact me, bayhudsonm@gmail.com. Your earliest response in this matter will be highly appreciated. Best regards, Hudson Bay.
I am going to open up a Gmail account called Chesapeake Bay and just start sending this guy emails.
Hey, Hudson, it's your old cousin Jesse. Hey, when's the last time you heard from old San out on the West Coast?
Right.
I missed you at the family reunion.
Michael was there.
Right. Oh, so funny.
But he's a big shot. You said he wouldn't. Yeah. Hilarious.
This is good. Very good.
So
right.
Felipe says that he did a cursory investigation of Hudson Bay LLP, found out that the company had been closed after it experienced a data breach, laid off all his employees, and seems to be facing a class action lawsuit.
Wow. So, talk about insult to injury.
Yeah.
Wow.
Not good for the Hudson Bay. Not good for old Hudson M. Bay.
No. Of the Hudson Bay Bays.
Right. Of the Hudson-based Bays.
Not very creative parents. Growing up in the... anyway, I've taken this joke, Joe, and I beat it to death, and then I've tried to revive it so I can beat it to death some more.
That's the David Letterman tactic, right?
That's right.
Where it goes down into the unfunny valley and then comes back up and starts getting funny again?
That's right. Yep. Exactly. All right. Well, our thanks to Felipe for sending this to us. We do appreciate it. And, of course, we'd love to hear from you. If there's something you'd like us to cover on the show, you can email us. It's hackinghumans@n2k.com. We want to thank all of you for listening. And, of course, we want to thank our sponsors at KnowBe4. They are experts in helping users do the right thing through new school security awareness training. That is Hacking Humans, brought to you by N2K Cyberwire. We'd love to know what you think of this podcast. Your feedback ensures we deliver the insights that keep you a step ahead in the rapidly changing world of cybersecurity. If you like our show, please share a rating and review in your favorite podcast app. Please also fill out the survey in the show notes or send an email to hackinghumans@n2k.com. We're privileged that N2K Cyberwire is part of the daily routine of the most influential leaders and operators in the public and private sector, from the Fortune 500 to many of the world's preeminent intelligence and law enforcement agencies. N2K makes it easy for companies to optimize your biggest investment, your people. We make you smarter about your teams while making your team smarter. Learn how at n2k.com. This episode is produced by Liz Stokes. Our executive producer is Jennifer Iben. We're mixed by Elliot Peltzman and Trey Hester. Our executive editor is Brandon Karp. Peter Kilpie is our publisher. I'm Dave Bittner.
I'm Chesapeake Bay.
Old Chesapeake Bay Kerrigan. You know what? We really need Maria back to rein us in.
Right.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.